The first one, I call this baby DuPont. ROE is equal to ROA times equity multiplier, or 1 plus net equity ratio. So if you have a company that is highly leveraged, it enhances return on assets. Or if your return on assets is negative, obviously it's going to make your return on equity even more negative. Remember, this is how much money you make per dollar invested, at least as measured in book value, into the business, not by shareholders. That's what assets are. And ROE is how much money do you make per dollar invested by the shareholders, because equity belongs to the shareholders. Uh, Oddly enough, you could also write ROE as profit margin times total asset turnover. Remember, return on assets is how much money do you make per dollar invested into the business. The first one, PM says, how much money do I make per dollar of sales? The second one says, how much assets how much sales I generate per dollar of assets. So together they determine return on assets. This is also kind of a decomposition. A firm may have a return on assets that's high, and I'd like to know why. Is it because they can use their capital efficiently, or they make a lot of money per dollar of sales, or both? For example, let's calculate the return on assets for NVIDIA, which you know is going to be a high number. Let's do it here. I'm going to take net income and I'm going to divide it by total assets. Of course, that's not a dollar number, it's a ratio, or I can express it as a percent. That's 45%. Trust me, that is a very large number. And let's see what happened to that over years. Oh, it has gone up. All the entire AI craze kind of took some steam in 2023. Even that 10.5% ROA is a very respectable number. Okay? But suddenly it jumped to 45. If you made this calculation for the last quarterly statement, I would not be surprised that number is close to 100%. It just keeps going up. Now, do we have that number high because PM is large or TAT is large? We already have TAT from above, so let's calculate PM, or profit margin. Thankfully, these are both right here. So their PM also increased quite a bit. It went from, it pretty much tripled. We already know that TAT, that also improved, but most of the improvement in ROA is because of the PM. So even a very simple analysis told me NVIDIA is doing a very good job in making money off of their products. And they also don't need as much assets to generate those sales. Now, the full version of full Monty DuPont, it's ROE equals PM times TAT times EM. Let's calculate ROE for NVIDIA. I'm not going to do it directly. I'm going to calculate the EM first. I need to get total assets and divide that by total liabilities. That is not a percent number. I mean, you can leave it as a percent. So things also have kind of improved in that sense. Their EM was 216 and back in 22. Now it's 289. They are more leveraged now, which should tell you that that even provides another contribution to ROE. And I can calculate ROE directly or using DuPont. I'm going to take the return on assets multiplied with EM. That 130% is a huge number. That's why NVIDIA went from $500 billion to $3 trillion in a matter of 2 years, because they're making a lot of money. The issue is whether or not they'll continue that, but that's a separate discussion. So going from 23 to 130, you see the contributions from each pieces. Quite a bit of it from PM, some from asset efficiency, and on top of that, you also have increased leverage. Why? Because NVIDIA actually did some stock buybacks last year. Even last year, if you look at their cash flow statements, let me make that bigger. I mean, there were some dividends, but not much. Let's see. What is the repurchase stuff? Oh, right here. I mean, they bought about 10 billion worth in 22, about 10 billion in 2023. So not only they're making money, they're also returning the money back to their shareholders and increasing their leverage as well, which is kind of makes sense. You know, if you're making a lot of money per dollar invested to the firm, you want to make sure that most of that money comes from somebody else because you don't pay much. You know, most of financing of NVIDIA is from essentially current liabilities. Let's stop here for today. On Thursday, remember, we're going to play Jeopardy on Chapter 2. Next Tuesday, we're going to wrap up Chapter 3 by talking briefly about the growth ratios. But more importantly, we're going to talk about price multiples. These are things like price equity rate, price earnings ratio, and how can you make use of these to compare firms in terms of whether they're cheap or not. And I will let you know early Thursday morning which groups are randomly selected to compete, and I'll tell those groups where to sit. Because I want those groups basically to have the 4 seats from there in the first 2 rows, 4 seats from there. The rest can sit anywhere you like. But the groups obviously need to sit together. Just a second, let me stop.